Good morning. We are live on this lovely Wednesday morning. I am in Atlanta. My name is Scott Kennedy. This guy over here is Nick Kendall. He's in Seattle. So we are coast to coast. We are Falcons coverage this morning. This is the final Falcons podcast of the 2023 season because if and when we come back on Monday, and yes, I'm planning on coming in on Monday. Nick, you don't have to, but we're going to talk Monday. I don't drink, so I'll be up early on Monday to do Falcons podcast. The Monday after the Sunday, we'll be talking Bears Falcons. Today we're going to preview Bears Falcons. We're going to preview some quarterback talk going into next year. We're going to talk some Arthur Smith. We're going to hit on all those things. First off, Nick, how are you doing this morning?
I am doing pretty well. A little white coat syndrome because I got my first doctor's appointment that I've had in about 5 years. I don't know, something like that. Other than obviously like vaccines and whatnot. But yeah, it'll be good. Have that this morning and I'm ready for January 1st for a different reason, Scott. All the big bowl games coming down the tracks here with the college football playoffs should be a lot of fun. I think Alabama's going to win it in the end, but shocker there, Nick. But I think it's every team has a chance, and I'm really hoping the Huskies pull one out.
Yeah, I think there's reasons to discuss why every one of these teams could win, which will make it kind of fun. Now, will we get those games? You never know. But the Georgia-Ohio State game was awesome. Was that last year or 2 years ago?
That was last year because CJ Stroud.
And Michigan TCU was a phenomenal game too. Then
championship.
The championship was a little one-sided, which you can tell pretty much right out of the gate.
Yeah,
I was like, wait a minute. Their offensive linemen look like Georgia's linebackers.
Yeah, that's one thing that's going to be nice about the expanded playoffs is that you probably can't have a Cinderella run to the championship at some extent, where I think the championship product, you're not going to get as hit or miss because anything can happen in one game, but to win multiple games, I mean, good luck.
Yeah, it's tough. I've never been a huge fan of playoffs, especially as they just keep bigger and bigger. I'm like, if it's Alabama and Texas, I'm like, I already saw that game. You've just rendered it meaningless. I already saw that game this year. I don't like rematches. I don't like second chances when it comes to this. I like cutthroat. So
yeah, I'll tell you though, if it's San Francisco versus Baltimore again in the Super Bowl, I'm not going to complain.
Yeah, but what did that do to the last game? The last game really didn't matter. I mean, it was, and we said that coming into on Coast to Coast. I'm like, this game's going to mean more to somebody, and someone's not going to have their best game, and that's how the game's going to go. We'll see.
Yeah,
I'm not going to read too much into that game for what I see. If they play again when I'm making predictions again. On that note,
Scott's a vegetarian, but he needs steaks. He's all about the steaks on that.
That's right. That's right. And so that's what I loved about college football. Pre bowl coalition.
Yeah.
When they did that, it was every game. God bless. If you lose, you're in deep doo-doo. And it didn't matter if it was August 30th or, when. But on that note, we come in here live because we like having the conversation with y'all. And there's a lot of people in here already. So we want to say hello to some folks, especially those that came in early on YouTube before we even got started. Like Oblivion Empire says, good morning, guys. I'll be here, but might not be able to message. That's okay. We're glad you're here. And I appreciate the messages after the fact, too, when you're leaving the comments after the fact. Good part of this community. So thank you so much. John Harrell, fresh off a big super chat on Monday, comes back in early. He says, good morning, Scott and Nick, Falcons family. Put y'all's GM hats on. Do you draft a quarterback or find a free agent? We can cop out on this one, Nick, and we'll deep dive into this one a little bit more, but it ends up becoming that old best player available syndrome for me because you've got to go after a quarterback. I would prefer one of the big three in the draft would be how I would like to do it. But as a GM, as a coach, I want a veteran. If I'm Arthur Smith and I'm back for a year and I have to win, I want a vet because my job's on the line every week starting in 2024. But again, it comes down to who's available. And we'll get into some of those things. Ira Howell, good to see you. Says, rise up, Falcons family. There's an abundance of quarterbacks will be in the 24 draft. This year's at the picks we like will be gone closer to our selection. I'm all for bringing Justin Fields home. And we'll talk about that one too. We've got there's some folks that are just flat out against Justin Fields. And I understand. We'll see if we'll have that conversation. I'm not against Justin Fields. He's not my first option, but I'd be pretty excited to see him play in Atlanta too, comparatively to what we've seen the last 3 years or so at the quarterback position. I think he'd be an upgrade, but we can get into that one as well. Michael Ranquillo, also off a pair of Super Chat Mondays, coming in from Tucson. Welcome in, Michael. He says, good morning, Scott and Nick on the Falcons podcast. Good morning to you as well. And then Mr. Shownuff, Daniels or May. We don't need to wait around until the second or third round when the quarterback talent decreases. If you're in for Daniels or May, don't you think you'd probably be in for Caleb Williams too? So you could, there's no guarantee that Caleb Williams goes number 1 overall. And one of these 3 guys is going to go number 2 overall. So I think you got to throw in all 3 of them. If you're willing to move up, it's going to cost you. You might as well shoot for the top spot, Nick.
I mean, we'll see what Chicago wants to do, right? That's you can shoot for the top spot, but I think right now they'll probably take a quarterback there and they'll have their choice of it. So somebody is going to be out. I understand that you want to list Williams too, because maybe they like May the most. Maybe they like Daniels the most. I mean, we're going to find out. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to follow. I don't know if I agree with the previous comment about the 24 draft having an abundance of quarterbacks. We've kind of talked about here and before, not to get way too college-y in here immediately, but the NIL impact on those quarterbacks. If you have guys who are, borderline first-round picks that are still young, your Quinn Ewers, your J.J. McCarthy's, talk about 2 guys in the playoffs. Shedeur Sanders, another one. Before it used to be, okay, well, let's get the clock started. You can be a first-round pick. There's value to that. Now you're making good money for a season at the college level. Maybe you always were, but now it's, on the books, so to speak. And
now I can claim it on my taxes.
Yeah. So those guys go back and there's a much better, much less risk to come back for a year because you're still going to get decently paid, especially if you're a quarterback in what the college market is right now. So I don't know what the mid rounds are going to look like because of that. And we still have 1 more year of the COVID eligibility extended. I mean, gosh, I think next year is the last year of that. So we'll see what happens there, but certainly an intriguing college quarterback class. Scott, not to put you on the spot right now, because obviously you haven't done neither have I, all the work yet, but your gut feeling on how you'd rank those top 3 guys. And do you have anybody else that stood out? How much have you?
A quarterback, I'd still probably go Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels.
I'm the same.
I mean, that's kind of where it started. I think there's been a very good anti-Caleb Williams campaign out there, almost like a smear campaign. And I'm not sure where it's coming from. Maybe it's coming from picks 2, 3, 4, and 5. And sometimes it's just fatigue. He won the Heisman last year. The hype, people like to see guys like that fall. It's just the nature of it's almost a jealousy thing where, the superstar quarterback falls. Yay. Now he's more human like the rest of us instead of this godlike figure that we make them out to be. So for me, it's still Caleb Williams and then Drake May and then Jaden Daniels. And I could see those guys going 1, 2, 3. I don't think anybody makes it out. I don't think any of those guys make it out of the top 5. So it's going to be expensive to get there. Zach Powers says, morning, coffee for you. And he asked me if, cheers on that. Let me have a sip of that. He asked me if I'm going down to the Senior Bowl again. I am. And speaking of talent, this might be the best Senior Bowl I've been to when all is said and done. This is, it's starting to stack up pretty nicely in there. And I'm looking forward to it. It's only a month away, y'all. So I'll have the 4K camera down there. Last year, I went out of town for my birthday right after the Senior Bowl, so I was a week late on getting clips out. Not this year. They'll be coming out fast and furious, getting the highlights and everything out. Silas coming in, he says, good morning, Scott and Nick and the Falcons family. That's all, y'all. Evan, good to see you. He says, Scott, are you confident that with a competent quarterback such as Fields, and some would argue that Fields is not a competent quarterback, this offense could look just as good, if not better, than Sunday? Nick, I'll let you take a shot on that one first. Let's say you got Justin Fields instead of Taylor Heineke against that in that game on Sunday. What are you thinking?
I think that you're getting a little bit more of a variance quarterback there in terms of specifically sacks. That's one of the big negatives for Justin Fields, and it's something that he's cleaned up here as of late. But if you can't talk about Justin Fields without talking about the impact that he has on the sacks, he has negative EPA gained this season on sacks. He actually has the fourth most EPA loss due to sacks this season. And also, you're going to lose a little bit of the yak ability too. He doesn't always throw the ball with quickness and timing in the quick game where it maximizes the ability after the catch. So some of the stuff with Bijan and Algier in the quick game and the yak stuff might be limited, but you're going to get much more vertical shots, and I would argue probably more explosives as well, because Justin Fields is a big game hunter down the field, and also you have the ability to work in the quarterback design run. So it's going to make your run game a lot more versatile, but you probably, based on what we've seen to date, you'll have to worry a bit about the variance and the negatives. You hope that the explosives can outdo the negatives, but that's always an impact of the game. And I think you'll always probably have a little bit of the turnovers and the quick game issues, but hopefully we can work on getting rid of the sacks. That's a big one. I think that's something we don't appreciate as much from the 1,000-foot lens, but those sacks are drive killers. They are some of the worst plays you have in a game. And it's a quarterback stat. Sacks are a quarterback stat.
That's a good answer. Because, Matt Ryan got sacked a lot and people were like, oh, well, we need a more mobile quarterback. It wasn't that he was mobile. It's that he held onto the ball a long time trying to get the big play. Mm-hmm. He held onto it as long as he possibly could. Mobile quarterbacks are usually sacked more because they're taking more risks trying to get out of there instead of getting rid of the ball. What I think about this game, Evan, is those 5 field goals. I think a couple of those are touchdowns. I think this one would have gotten really, really ugly with a little bit more explosive quarterback play because they were just dominating. As Drake, my friend Drake, comes in. Drake, it's good to see you. Got to guest with Drake last week on the Horseshoe Huddle podcast, and he's coming in with a very generous super chat. And I picked the Colts in that game, but I warned the Colts fans, if this Falcons team gets it together, which they haven't really done all year, they've got the talent to be really, really good. The Colts were banged up. They've been overachieving. Are they running out of gas at this point? And everything went against the Colts and started going the Falcons' way. And part of you starts saying, well, where has this team been? Come on. But Drake says the Falcons absolutely smacked the Colts across the face on Christmas Eve. Bijan's going to be a superstar. It was such good complementary football, being able to get first downs, Nick, and then run Tyler Algier for 3 carries. And on the same drive, mix in some Cordero Patterson. And on the same drive, mix in some Bijan Robinson. And then have a third down conversion on a pass. Hit Kyle Pitts early. I mean, that's what we were looking for at the beginning of the season. And it's taken until week 16 to get there, Nick.
Yeah, it's taken a bit. I mean, you didn't step on the rakes in this game consistently with the turnovers. That's been the big thing. Obviously, we haven't seen the run game be as efficient and explosive consistently as we saw against the Colts. So shout out to them for that. It's not a bad Colts defense by any means. So that was good. But really, I mean, the big thing is I don't think they're that far away. It's just you got to take care of the GD ball, right? And the Falcons have not done that. So that's maybe a sign of a young team making some mistakes. Maybe it's a Ritter issue. I guess we're going to find out as the sample size increases here for the Falcons themselves, maybe not for Ritter. But I think it's honestly closer to the team that we've seen all season. It's just that's how impactful turnovers are. There's other than actually scoring points, there's nothing that's more indicative of the outcome of a game than turnovers.
And the penalties were down this week too.
Yeah.
It was always okay. You're looking good. You're in rhythm. You're getting down there. You get to the 15, and it was either a penalty or a turnover. Mm-hmm. It's like, God bless, guys. Come on. Mm-hmm. So yeah, this was. I will stick by what I said a minute ago about the Colts overachieving. I believe that. And I've said that Shane Steichen is on the very short list for Coach of the Year coming in, that it could come down to him and D'Amico Ryans on January 7th in that game. Gardner Minshew is your quarterback and winning, 5 out of 6 games and tied for first in the AFC South. Losing Michael Pittman, losing Jonathan Taylor for half the season. All that stuff kind of caught up to the Colts. Your right tackle's out. They had been winning anyway. Not this time. And that's a credit to the Atlanta Falcons. It's credit to Arthur Smith in this game. We'll get into other things. Dave coming in with a super chat. Thank you so much. Support for the show with that super sticker. Appreciate you, Dave. Dave's been with us since the very beginning. Yeah. We're already up on 3 years of the Falcons podcast, and we're here because of guys like you, Dave. So thank you. Thank you so much. Want to keep saying hello to some folks as we get into, let's see. Nando Barrington, John Roberts says, Nando says he made sure he shared because Nando says, good morning, Scott. And Nick, Bama wins it all. I wouldn't bet against them. That's for sure. And Breon has a good idea here also is, do both when we talk about the quarterbacks. And I'm actually okay. Taylor Heineke was on a 1-year deal with a 1-year option. His option's not all that expensive for the next year. And I wouldn't mind having him back as my veteran free agent guy who's already there, and then draft a guy. His next year, his cap hit is 9. So it's not insignificant. His dead cap is 2, and that's why I called it a 1-year deal with an option, because you can move on just like you did with Marcus Mariota. You can move on with him with just a $2 million dead cap hit and get $7 million back in savings. But that's a pretty good insurance policy, even at $9 million for a backup, when you won't have much in your quarterback room at all. Desmond Ritter's still cheap, and if you draft somebody, you'll be in the low 7 figures. So you'll still only have $12 or $13 million in your quarterback room next year, even if you go with a high round pick, Nick.
Yeah, you have a lot of options at the quarterback. I'm not against Heineke. If you have a new coach coming in, then you might as well just tear the page. We'll see what happens with Arthur Smith on that one. But for continuity's sake of the offense and getting some guys up to speed with just the operation of the practice and everything that goes on to make a team week to week, wouldn't be the worst in the world. And we got Harry Marshall coming in with a cute kid, man. I got my little first guy coming in on the way, and I'm definitely in that, like, noticing. I never really noticed kids before, and now it's like I see them everywhere. But
what's funny is my eyes are bad enough, and that picture is so small, it looks like an old school can of Budweiser sitting in front of him with the with a red can and the blue label. I'm sure that's not what it is.
No.
But yeah, it's like, where's your brain, Scott? Yeah.
But he says
that was my kid picture with my dad, was the can of Budweiser sitting in front of me.
Well, more of an IPA guy out here in the Pacific Northwest, not to be a stereotype, but we got Harry saying, I think Falcons should go after Kirk Cousins in free agency or Fields via trade, a draft pick, not a first. I agree with Harry. Scott, I think you and I kind of disagree a tad on the value of Justin Fields. I think he's going to get multiple day 2 picks in the end. I don't think it's going to cost a first rounder. Maybe unless you're talking pick 31, 32, but I don't know. I think it's probably more of a pick like 40 and then a conditional pick and maybe even like a 5th round pick as well. We got John Robert also coming in saying share a like, please. And I'm not against Kirk Cousins either. The big kicker here is that the team that probably could use him the most is the team he's most comfortable with and familiar with in the Vikings. If he gets out there, it makes you worried about the Achilles long-term as well. Like, is there something else, something they know that we don't know? So that injury just really kind of tossed this thing in the air. But he was playing like a top, I mean, God, forgive me for this, but like a top 5 quarterback in the NFL this season before going down. He was really, really good. Who knows how it would have played out the rest of the season. But he'd be an awesome get. If you're talking about instant impact, assuming he's healthy, I don't know if there's a quarterback who gives you more 2024 wins than Kirk Cousins. That's obviously not the point of doing it, but he's been good.
If Kirk Cousins was the quarterback of this team, you're talking 15 games, 12-3, maybe 11-4 at worst.
Yeah.
And everybody, I don't want Kirk Cousins, that old guy. I'm like, y'all are really, really, I almost want to say unrealistic about who is available out there to go and get. It's like, well, I don't want that guy. Does he make your team better? Yes or no? If the answer is yes, then he needs to be on the table. We need to be having this discussion. And part of making your team better, Nick, is and I'll listen to this argument, is your availability. And Red Swarm, good morning, Scott and Nick, and everyone in the chat, is your availability. Okay, I don't want that guy coming off an injury. Okay, I'm listening. But don't tell me he's old and sucks, because that's not right. He's too expensive, and that would hinder our ability to put other players around him. I'll listen to that too. So that's part of making your team better. Can he stay healthy? Because if he's not making your team better. And does he cost too much? What does it cost to bring him in? Because that doesn't make your team better. I'm listening to both of those. But Kirk Cousins is a better quarterback. This isn't a hot take than what you have had the last couple of years in Atlanta.
Yeah. I mean, he's been really good. And I think right now we were in a, like, not to get too philosophical on this, Scott, but we were kind of in a sling it around, crazy arm talent, athletic area for the quarterback. And that still matters a lot. But with what defenses are doing now with the simulated pressures and the versatile athletes that can play multiple spots, the 2 deep safety shells and playing nickel more than ever, it's made it as important as it's been in maybe a decade for those quarterbacks to be much more pocket oriented and cerebral. I mean, if you can give me a guy who can get your team lined up correctly, read the right stuff pre-snap, and get the ball to the right guy in time, there's room underneath in the middle of the field to operate and create some explosives. I mean, how do we see guys like we're talking about Kirk Cousins or Brock Purdy, who are limited in physical gifts and arm talent, but they are killing it. Super efficient offenses. So I mean, it's always nice to have the guy with the rocket arm and the athleticism, but almost coming a little bit back to basics here of quarterback, that pocket maneuverability, your ability to hang in there and go through your reads while chaos is surrounding you. Just making sure you're getting through your progressions in the right read. I mean, it seems simple, but it's how we're seeing all these old head quarterbacks all of a sudden playing great again. It's like, well, they know how to quarterback.
It's patience and calmness in there because you're not getting the explosive plays nearly as much. So you've got to be able to, you can't be overly greedy to a certain extent. I mean, you've got your outliers that are just that much better than everybody else. But to be fair, Lamar Jackson is having one of his best seasons, having MVP type of season, partially because of the things you're talking about. He's not running for as many long plays. He's playing quarterback. He's taking what the defense gives him, using his playmakers. Keith, good to see you this morning. He came in with some stars too on Facebook, so thank you. Just a reminder, the most direct way to support the show is just like Keith has, like Dave has, like Drake has, with those super chats and the stars on Facebook. As our final Falcons podcast of 2023, I'm going to wrap this comment into a bunch of them because there's about a bunch in a row. There's a lot of quarterback talk right now, and I think that's we can talk Bears, but we can talk Justin Fields and Bears at the same time. Keith says, are we playing against our starting quarterback this week? Austin, good to see you. He says, if y'all had the option, would you take Kyler Murray if you wanted to come to Atlanta? Rudy says, good morning. Stephen Womble says, make a play for Fields or for future conditional picks. Morning, guys. I like that option a lot. And then Zach Powers also saying, hey, Caleb Williams, I give fair criticism. He's fumbled like 15 times this year, and fumbles drive me nuts. That is a concern. That's a big one, Zach. That's a good shout because you don't see those on 7v7 passing plays too much out there. But you look at a box score and you're like, man, hold on to the ball. I think fumbles are worse than interceptions, honestly, Nick, when it comes to turnovers. And it's just as far as the momentum swing, and I feel like those are even worse.
I mean, statistically
sometimes
speaking,
the interceptions can be schemed or, a bad throw, but the fumbles are just demoralizing.
And just talking from a pure data perspective, they are worse because you're not getting that chance for a down the field explosive most of the time when those interceptions do come. When you throw it down the field, an interception, you can live with the risk there sometimes because you have a chance for obviously the explosive play. And in the NFL, it could also be a DPI and just the field position. I mean, a long interception is essentially a punt, which isn't great, but it's sometimes you're talking, a 30, 40-yard difference between the fumble and the interception. So yeah, fumbles are killers.
Yeah, you get a 3rd and 12 and you throw an INT 45 yards down the field. You're like, so what? Maybe I got the interception. There's positive outcome that belong there. So I want to get into this one though, but I think you're going to have some competition for Justin Fields. It's not going to just be the Atlanta Falcons. Can I make that trade and sweeten it with as a conditional pick? Right now, the Falcons are watching Calvin Ridley. If he re-signs, the 4th round pick has already moved up to a 3rd round pick. That was a conditional. They got a 5th and a 4th with conditions. The 4th has already moved up to a 3rd based on playing time conditions. The 3rd becomes a 2nd if they re-sign him to another contract. Okay, send them a 2/3, one of them being conditional based on certain aspects. Throws for over 300 yards, gets 10 or more wins, all of those things that can escalate it up to a 1st. I would love that option. I don't know if it'll be good enough to get Justin Fields from the Chicago Bears.
I think you'll have to throw in a 2nd round pick this year and probably a 5th rounder and then a conditional in 2025 that could go up from a 3rd to a 2. I think it's going to be similar to the Sam Darnold from the Jets to Carolina trade package. I feel like that's about the bundle you're expecting there. You only have 1 year left of control. You're going to have to make that decision on that 5th year option. I think you probably do extend it, but as you've kind of discovered here, Scott, for the quarterback, that 5th year option is cha-ching. That's one reason teams are not as nutso about getting that 5th-year option on the quarterback anymore, because it's not as cost-friendly as it used to be, since they changed what parameters define that 5th-year option and made it fully guaranteed. So it will be interesting, but I'm not expecting it to be too crazy. I don't think you have to give up multiple firsts or anything like that, just because he's been volatile, injured as well. Injury is the big concern with me with Fields, honestly. But yeah, I think a couple day 2 picks and maybe another pick in there as well, I think should get it done. We'll see what the market is, though, because you're right. There could be some competition. We've talked about on here the Steelers a little bit being a team that maybe could approach him. That seems like a possible fit. And then also over the last week, there's been a kind of a groundswell. I don't know if it's fan-based, but the Raiders, who all of a sudden look feisty and interesting under Antonio Pierce out there in Vegas. So there's going to be some teams hunting.
How the Broncos could be in the market too for Justin Fields,
maybe.
possibly. He doesn't typically fit what you're thinking of with Sean Payton, but he fits more of an Arthur Smith, Shane Steichen RPO based with, if you start looking at that tree that's coming out of Philadelphia too, in that way. And Maurice, good to see you, Maurice. He says, our offensive line's got to stop the pre-snap stuff and holding that's been killing drives all year. I agree. And that was one of the keys I said in this last game. Only 4 penalties for 35 yards. And I don't remember seeing those drive killers. When you're terrible in the passing game, and frankly, the Falcons game has been terribly in passing, you can't get behind the sticks like that. 1st and 15, 1st and 20, 2nd and 12. And it's been tough. Dave, good to see you. Appreciate the super chat earlier. He says, Scott, what do you think about O-line coach Dwayne Ledford? Some fans want him fired. Dave thinks that's asinine. I would agree with Dave. I remember when Arthur Smith took over this team in 2020, going into the 2021 season, and I was livid that they took Kyle Pitts because the offensive line was a travesty and they had no defense. I'm like, what are you going to do there? So the improvement that the offensive line has made over the course of Arthur Smith's tenure. Now, I think they regressed a little bit compared to last year. Caleb McGarry's improved. Chris Lindstrom has gone from good to superstar. Say what you want. People are knocking Drew Dahlman. I think he's still the number 2 ranked PFF center in the league. Most of that's through run blocking. This is his 3rd year. Left guard, they got competency once Jalen Mayfield was out of there. Good God. They got competency from 4 different guys at that position. Colby Cossack, Eli Wilkinson last year. Matt Hennessy. Remember, Atlanta Cognac Hennessy. Matt Hennessy playing left guard last year. And then Jake Matthews has been the Matt Ryan of the offensive line. He's been steady no matter who's been there. I think Dwayne Ledford has done a fantastic job with this team.
I would say that I think they've underperformed to an extent this season, but not based on the overall sample size of the years that he's been here in Atlanta. So I wouldn't fire him, but if it was another down year next year with the quarterback play a little bit more consistent and better, then maybe we could start talking. But right now I would say we've got to bring him back.
Oblivion Empire says, of the guys that I would most want on the offensive staff, Dwayne Ledford is number 1. Offensive line coach for the Atlanta Falcons would be the guy I would most want back on the offensive side of the ball. Frankly, he might be the only guy I want back on the offensive side of the ball. Oblivion Empire says, come on, guys, hit the likes. Also, what do you think, Nick, the Atlanta Falcons will draft with their 1st-round pick if we trade for Fields, assuming it doesn't cost you a 1st-round pick?
Right now, you're sitting there with the 10th pick in the draft. Who knows? That probably puts you anywhere from 7 to 16, still with 2 weeks left, and so many teams stuck with about the same amount of wins as the Falcons. On paper, the obvious answer would be edge. I'm not sure what exactly happens with edge rusher in this upcoming draft, given I feel like there are 3 guys who are probably worth a top 20 pick right now. We'll see what happens. I was not going to include Chop Robinson in that. But if he goes to...
So I got my mock yesterday, but the Falcons were picking 11.
He's my 4th edge right now on this season. He just needs to do a little bit. The production's not really there. The traits are there, but the production hasn't been there despite having a large sample size, which concerns me. It's not like a small 1-year kind of guy who's a freak and had been buried. And I also worry it's a little bit of a DPR, so to speak, a designated pass rusher type. Mm-hmm. So a guy that the Falcons were really interested in last year, apparently, reportedly, and might have even taken him if he had come out, is Jared Verse. more of that pocket crunching type as well, Scott, which we know from that Saints school of thought. You want a little bit more of the pocket crunchers. So Verse is an option. Leatu Latu is, of course, there depending on the medicals.
A lot too. He wasn't there.
And then edge number 1 in this class, in my opinion, is Dallas Turner, who is, I think, the best combination of tools, traits, and production. Edge makes sense. The one I think people will maybe kind of furl up at a little bit, maybe you too, Scott, but you just look at the math of the roster right now and where the class is right now. I mean, wide receiver is something at least you are looking at in terms of the talent. I mean, Mac Hollins has been a fine player, but if you're bringing in a Justin Fields, you surround him with weapons because, I mean, outside of Drake London, where's your playmakers on the perimeter? So that's one that makes some sense to me. And I see John Harrell saying Verse is a top 15 pick. Yeah, Verse is going to end up being a top 20 pick. I don't know if I'll say 15 exactly because the testing is so important for edge, probably more important for edge than any other spot in football. But I mean, Verse kind of started slow this season, but then you go back and watch him against Florida, against Louisville. I mean, the last month of the season, he was just wrecking them out there. He's got super sock'em gloves when he plays with his heavy hands. So he's definitely would be somebody that would make sense.
Yeah. Oblivion Empire. And it does say you and Nick. So that's me. I was going to pivot off of Nick. He went ahead and got to it. Wide receivers on the table. And I bitched about wide receiver the first 2 drafts, pass catcher, wide receiver, whatever you want to say. But this team's closer to competing, and they've got the bones in place. On the offensive line is steady. Their defense is good. They're going to have to make some more changes there in the offseason, but that's just standard. Their quarterback isn't settled yet, but I have to figure that they're going to address that somehow, some way. And even if they don't, let's just say it's Taylor Heineke. Worst case for me, it's Taylor Heineke again. Well, that's still better than the worst case of what we saw this year. You know how many wide receivers are under contract for the Atlanta Falcons in 2024? One wide receiver is under contract in 2024, Drake London. That's it. Wide receivers on the table. I think, Nick, when my choice came up, when I did a mock the other day, the top 2 guys on the board were Chop Robinson, edge, or Kool-Aid McKinstry, corner. And I'm like, I could go either way on that. Corner's going to be an option too. Jeff Okudah is going to get some more money. He's been in and out of the lineup with some injuries too. So you need to go with you're going to need to go cornerback as well. So the premium positions are all on the table, and you should be able to get one there.
I mean, it doesn't make sense if Arthur Smith is back so much, but I think Terry's probably pretty safe with Atlanta with the building blocks that you see here on paper. I think offensive tackle is also something you got to talk about right now. It wouldn't make sense to move on from McGarry after this season, but after 2024, let's say he has another poor season or is injured or anything, you can save $14.5 million with only $2 million dead after 2024. Jake Matthews is getting up there as well, and it looks like a pretty good tackle class, and you need those guys. So I know that's not a rotational position. That's much more, 5-year perspective of this team, but that's one thing about the offensive line. You don't want to draft it when it's already a problem. You need to draft it before it's a problem. You need to see, what does it look like 2 to 3 years down the road? So I think offensive tackle, where you're sitting right now, is something that you probably want to consider as well.
Yeah, and that's a premium position, and it's deep at offensive tackle. So offensive tackle is on the board. You could move on from McGarry. There actually would be some savings there at $3 million savings. It's almost cap neutral with the dead cap number. I don't think that's where you want to go, especially with a rookie. You'd rather have him for one more year because he's not overly expensive. His cap number is like 12, which isn't bad for a starting right tackle. And then it goes the next year is 16-2, that's either he won't play on that contract in 2025. He'll either get an extension / restructure, or you cut him as a cap casualty / performance casualty in 2025. And then you, like Nick said, Jake Matthews is getting older.
He's got to be one of the oldest offensive starting tackles in football.
He's actually still only 31. He turns 32. He turns 32 in a couple days. He turns 32 in February, it looks like, but he's still just 32. But what was he? Was he 09? God, 10? He's been in the league a long time. So he was a 3-and-out guy, which doesn't happen very often on the offensive line.
He's only 29? No, that's not the different Jake Matthews. Okay, we're good.
Yeah, he's 30. He's basically 32.
Okay. Well, that's shocking.
Mark Wilson coming in with a big, generous yellow super sticker on YouTube. Thank you, Mark. Appreciate the support that y'all are showing the show. I got it right. I never get showing the show. I don't know why I can't just erase that from my vocabulary since I screw it up all the time. And
Jake
keep
Matthews
with a stars reminder here that this has to be very important. My forehead's not shiny enough. The lights aren't bright enough. Everyone sends stars. Scott's forehead is starting to dull. It is. Here's a trade secret, though. I actually do powder this big old forehead of mine before I go on the shows with these lights. First time I did TV, I think it was probably 2003. So I was 30 years old, full of juice. I don't even know stinking makeup. What are you talking about? It looked like high beams coming out of my forehead when I watched the monitor. I'm like, yeah, go ahead and shine this big old thing up because, the forehead didn't exactly just grow like this. It's always been pretty big. So thank you, Keith. Jason Heller coming in with a super sticker over there on YouTube. Nice and red. Thank you, my friend. The support that y'all are showing the show, there's twice in a row, Nick, means a lot to us. So thank you very much. Want to say hello to a couple more folks that have come in. Walter, we were talking about number 2. He says, if we get a decent number 2 wide receiver, we take off. It was one of the bigger questions coming into the season other than quarterback. The quarterback was always the big question. How fast can all these new faces on the defense gel together and become a good unit? Really fast. Great job, Ryan Nielsen. Arguably the assistant coach of the year in my book. One of those guys. Who's going to step up and be the number 2 wide receiver? No one. No one has. It's on the table. It absolutely is on the table.
The one thing that's nice is that you do have a wide receiver 1, so you don't have to feel forced to go wide receiver in the first round, because I think you can probably find a wide receiver 2 in this draft, day 2. It looks like it's going to be a pretty deep draft. I mean, we'll see what happens with guys coming out or whatnot, but typically wide receivers come out pretty fast. So you're not seeing those guys stick around. But day 2, you got both Texas guys are really interesting. Xavier Worthy and Adonai Mitchell. You have Xavier Legette at South Carolina has been a lot of fun. You have Tez Walker at North Carolina, Troy Franklin at Oregon. So there's going to be, I'm sure, some other guys emerge too. So it doesn't have to be a first round pick, so to speak. If you have a chance at one of the top 3 guys in this draft, I think it'd be pretty darn impressive to walk away with. You're not going to get Marvin Harrison Jr., but Neighbors is unbelievable. I think Roma Dunze, I don't think we're talking enough about him. He's unbelievable.
We talk wide receiver, Nick. I will raise absolute holy hell if they trade up and took Marvin Harrison Jr. I will string them up from the rafters.
It won't happen.
If they trade up multiple first-round picks to get up into the top 5 and draft Marvin Harrison Jr. with no quarterback, I will raise holy hell.
I will put a guarantee out there for you guys that's not happening for what the cost, because there's quarterbacks.
At least they need one. This isn't like the Julio Jones trade where they had just had 50 hung on them by the Packers after a 13-3 season with a top 5 offense and then trade 5 picks for a wide receiver. Not that I hold a grudge or anything. And the only reason that doesn't get more attention is because Julio was really good and the Cleveland Browns don't know how to draft. But those 5 picks, I've said over and over again, one pick that was available where the Falcons would have picked Cameron Jordan would have been better for that team than Julio Jones. They needed Cameron Jordan a lot more on that defense than they needed Julio Jones on the offense. That might be blasphemy to talk about Saints. Doesn't mean I'm wrong. Mark Wilson, quarterback is the hardest position to fill. Fields is no certainty to be available, or Cousins leaving the Vikings. Most likely either trade up or a day 2 pick. In the mock draft I did yesterday, I took Chop Robinson, and with the second pick, I took Michael Penix Jr. in the second round.
Yeah, I think there are going to be some day 2 quarterbacks options. We obviously could see Bo Nix there as well. It seems like Bo Nix is thought of slightly higher than Penix. I'm not ready to distinguish either of those guys. Then after that, you got the super wild card would be Spencer Rattler. He has some character issues. It's not like he's out here committing crimes or anything. He's just, some people think he's a kind of a grade A, you know what. I don't know if you ever saw that. I think it was Last Chance. I don't remember which one it was. There was some show where he was, just all out there for everyone to see. And, he was a 17-year-old kid at that point, but did not come off the best. And so we'll see what happens. He'll have a chance down there in Mobile, but there's a reason that a few years ago, Scott, in those way too early mock drafts, some people had him first overall because that arm talent and the arm elasticity is legit. I'm really excited for you to go down there in Mobile and be like, oh, wow, well, look what he looks like in practice. That arm is probably going to be pretty interesting.
The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to watch him between drills. I'm going to see how he interacts with his teammates, how his teammates interact with him. Those are the kind of things you get to see in person and kind of get an idea. I can't remember his name. It was like Baxter or something. He was from San Diego, and he ended up playing running back. He's the next Reggie Bush for USC. I think he scored 7 touchdowns from the quarterback position in the game I was at. It was 5 or 7, one of those odd numbers, but it was a bunch. Not a single teammate once ever, not even one time thinking about it, even acknowledged his existence in the end zone all the way to the bench.
That matters.
He failed.
That matters so much for quarterback, man. You got to be a dude. That's one reason that Josh Allen is special. I mean, he is they love him. Those teammates love him. It matters. So we'll see what happens with Spencer Rattler. I also did want to throw out Michael Pratt at Tulane as well. But once you get beyond those first-round quarterbacks, especially for potentially an Arthur Smith-led team where you need results, you have to supplement that with probably somebody who's playing immediately from the free agents pool. So it's once you talk day 2, it gets a little dicey.
Taylor Heineke.
Yeah. Man, I don't know if I'd want to put my job on the line with Taylor Heineke out there.
You did it with Desmond Ridder and Taylor Heineke this year.
Yeah. I don't know if this year was do or die, though, especially if he's back. And next year will be.
Next year, absolutely. Next year could be week to week. Next year could be the Dan Quinn where they start 0-3 and we start writing up, here are the top candidates to replace Arthur Smith in the next couple of weeks. 2 games left. I've said 7-10. I think he's in trouble. 8-9, it's questionable, but I would lean towards him coming back. 9-8, I think he's safe. So that's 2-0, 1-1, and 0-2. Those are the scenarios there. Rusty coming in. He says trading for Justin Fields would be the front office saying they made a mistake in 2021 by drafting Kyle Pitts. They won't trade for him just for the simple fact that it would make them look bad and clueless. See, I don't agree with this take, Rusty. And the main reason why is because it won't be a number 4 overall pick. It won't be as expensive. If you're trading a couple of day 2 picks, the equivalent of a low number 1 to get Justin Fields, then that's cost on that. So I don't necessarily agree with that. And then let me see here. Someone, I think it was Dave that came in here. It wasn't Chris. It was Dave. He says, I would draft a quarterback in the 2nd round. I like Fields, but the math and timing is not adding up. Here's something that's interesting to me, y'all. Give me the 2 most likely first day 2 picks. That we've already said their names, so just say them again for me real quick.
Michael Penix and Bo Nix.
Exactly. Okay. Justin Fields is 11 months older than Bo Nix. Justin Fields is 14 months older than Michael Penix. Okay? Where would we be talking about Justin Fields if he had spent the last 3 years at Oregon instead of with the Chicago Bears and coming out as a 24-year-old quarterback?
We'd be wondering what's wrong with him.
Why is he still there?
Because why the hell are you still there? Yeah. So, I mean, we'd still be talking about him a top 10, top 15.
We'd be talking about him number 1 overall.
Yeah.
I mean, I had him number 2 a few years ago. So yes, he would be. I had him number 2 behind Trevor Lawrence.
Me too.
In that class. So we'd be talking about a number 1 overall. So now the cost, that's one thing. You're like, oh, he's going to have to get paid. But again, he's under control in 2023 or 2024. Justin Fields, and then his 5th-year option for 2025, which you would pick up if you traded for him, would be would be $22 million. That's his 5th-year option. That's not outrageous. If you've got your starting quarterback, if he plays average, that's average QB money. Then you've got time to decide. Now, what you don't do is Russell Wilson this guy and bring him in and sign him to a $180 million guaranteed deal the minute you sign him when you got 2 years left to control. You take your time and you figure it out. Now, the cost of $30 million across 2 years, money-wise, I don't think that's that bad. I think that's still a risk worth taking depending on the cost of moving up to get your quarterback in the draft.
Yeah. And I have a comment here from the most recent one from Zach Powers. He also lists J.J. McCarthy above Nix and Penix. I would have McCarthy above Nix and Penix, but goddamn, he scares the absolute heck out of me, Scott. Sorry, I shouldn't say GD. He scares the heck out of me because he's asked to do so little. Right now, it's almost like, just completely game managing around him. So they haven't had put as much on him from a volume perspective, passing, having to drop back and win games. The flashes are there, but I just consistently, it's hard for me to get that TCU game out of my mouth where they actually fell behind and had to play comeback, and wheels came off the track on that one. So Mark McCarthy is really interesting. I'll be curious to see if he does come out, because he has a chance to be number 1 overall in 2024, and the difference between, let's say, the 15th to 20th pick to number 1 overall, especially when you can get NIL money at Michigan, is significant. So I'm waiting on McCarthy right now. I will say that the tools and the flashes are there. I understand why he'd be interesting. He'd be my quarterback 4 right now. But man, there's just so little on tape. And maybe this is me kind of reacting a little bit to liking Trey Lance and then that not having worked out. It's like, man, it's like the volume is not really there right now. But Big Ten, I know he's running the pro style a lot too. So he's interesting, but I still under evaluation.
And he's young, because I looked him up too. He's like 20.
Yeah, he's really young.
He's 4 years younger than some of these other guys.
No.
When we're on here, so that's something to consider too. Where's McCarthy after next year? But when we start talking about age, well, he hasn't done much with the Chicago Bears. Okay, where would Bo Nix have been with the Chicago Bears as the starter the last 3 years? Would he even be alive, or would he be in traction somewhere? I mean, we've got to take some things into perspective. They're about the same age. I saw Bo Nix at Auburn. I saw Bo Nix play Georgia at when he was at Oregon. I have a feeling he'd struggle with the Detroit Lions or, the Baltimore Ravens. I don't think he'd be quite as successful on there.
Bo Nix is going to end up.
Marie says that there isn't an Auburn fan out there that's going to want to draft Bo Nix. He was poor in the SEC. Now, again, that a lot could change there, but
he seems like a good kid, and he raises the floor of your room a lot. He seems pretty mature. I mean, he is the most starts ever for a college quarterback in college football history. But I think you're probably drafting somebody who you're hoping is a okay starting quarterback on the rookie contract. I think anything above that would not be as likely. So I don't know. That's what you're talking about. It's like when we had the Ritter discussion here, Scott, and I was kind of a little bit like, okay, you took a day 2 quarterback. What are we talking about here in terms of probabilities when you talk about a day 2 quarterback? I had just gone through the Drew Lock experience. It's a lottery ticket. Maybe you get lucky. That's why you take the shot. But odds are you get a backup caliber quarterback on a rookie deal. And that's not bad value, because those, especially this year, how many backup quarterbacks have we seen? But if you're drafting that guy to come in and start, or you're banking on him to be a starter, especially immediately, you're already cooked. You're already cooked. You might as well if I don't win this scratcher ticket, my family's going to starve. Good luck. God bless and good luck.
The time to take the backup quarterback was 2021.
Yeah.
When you had Matt Ryan on the staff. So the next quarterbacks were taken. It was after Trey Lance, Justin Fields, Kyle Trask went in the second, Kellen Mond went in the third, Davis Mills went. The problem was the quarterback class was bad. I was never a fan of Kellen Mond going back to high school. I saw him play at Grayson. He probably played against Taylor Heineke. I think Taylor Heineke's a little bit older than that, but I saw Kellen Mond. He came up with IMG and played Grayson. It was right when I moved back here from being away, and I think fall of 2016. Rusty has a good one here. He says, made an A. It's not hard. It'll be hard to get him.
Yeah.
That'd be an easy choice if he's there. That would not be a hard choice to make. It's going to be hard to get him. Victor says, bring back Dan Quinn and draft a quarterback like McCarthy. I think Dan Quinn was a great coach and just needed to clear his head with a change of scenery. Bring the guy back? ? I would rather roll the dice on Ryan Nielsen as the defensive coordinator that's already there. I like Dan Quinn. Dan Quinn's inexperience bit him in the ass in a couple of things. One was coaching staff. You had a lot of talent on that offensive coaching staff when Kyle Shanahan was there. Kyle Shanahan was going to the 49ers. You weren't getting him. But both LaFleurs were still there. Mike McDaniel was still there. And all 4 of those guys left. And you brought in Steve Sarkisian. He'd never been a coordinator at the NFL level. I'm not sure he'd ever coached at the NFL level. And you handed him the keys to the number one offense. This guy had very public problems. That was a fireable offense. Then you kept him. You were done. You were done. Number two, I don't think he was strong enough to advocate for what he needed on when we're talking about team building. That team was so unbalanced. Offense. They hit a hot streak in 2016. That defense wasn't worth a damn all year until about the last 2 games of the regular season. Then they hit a hot streak in the playoffs. But the defense, it was so unbalanced that was his undoing. I would rather go with Ryan Nielsen than Dan Quinn. And that's, forget the past. Let's say Dan Quinn had never coached here before. You can't bring Dan Quinn back to Atlanta. It's not going to happen. You just can't do it. Based on the 28-3 he's done in Atlanta. But if you want to talk to me about defensive coaches, I'm going to keep the one I've got. That's where I would go, Nick.
I mean, if we're talking defensive coaches, there's a list of names that we could get into, and you could find previous episodes where we've talked about it. I mean, you talk about assistant coach of the year, Scott, and you're right. Nielsen deserves a shout out, but I mean, we can start etching it in stone. It's going to be Mike McDonald from Baltimore. He's the guy. If you're talking defensive coaches right now, Patriot Watch USA says, do Atlanta Falcons want Justin Fields? I think they'll definitely be interested, especially if you're keeping Arthur Smith. What was that?
Fans.
Do
Atlanta fans want Justin Fields.
Yeah, but I'm saying, like, if you're keeping your head coach, then I think you would want Justin Fields because he, I think, gives you a more immediate chance to win. And I think he matches well with the quarterback run design stuff that seems to be emphasized with Arthur Smith. He likes to have that option for the quarterback to run the football. So I think fans would want it because it makes sense with the coaching staff and scheme you have.
I think fans are very split on him. So it would be, some would be excited to see him. Some say absolutely no way, no how. I don't want him there at all. And some of them feel this way, like he can't throw. I would disagree. And again, I would say if he was coming out of college now, he'd be a top 10 pick. So that's where I am on this. I would be interested. I think Justin Fields is better than Taylor Heineke. I think Justin Fields is better than Desmond Ridder. I think Justin Fields improves the Atlanta Falcons. What else can you do? If that's my best option for improving the quarterback room, I think he would do that. Cost then comes into play and all those type of things that we hit on earlier in the show. Harry says maybe Matt Ryan for quarterback coach. Only if he's got this burning desire to coach does something like that happen. Otherwise, they've got a very, very cushy job in media. Once you've already in there, the only time I ever really remember seeing it happen, I've seen it happen a couple of times now, so I won't say never. But John Gruden got a record-breaking contract to come back and do it, and all the power in the world to come back and do it. Mac Brown went back to North Carolina after having a nice job in the studio. And I don't know if he was forced out or not, but guys don't go the other direction very often, man. It's unless it's like a 1-year hiatus where they're taking their payoff from where they just got fired. And that Matt Ryan, I think, has a very good future with CBS. Yeah,
I mean, that's the gig, right? That's the big time. If you're making that, coaching is a grind. The announcing stuff is far more cushy. We got Michael Grimmage coming in here saying Kyler Murray or Justin Fields. I'd take Kyler Murray over Fields, but Kyler Murray is going to cost you a first-round pick in comparison, where Fields is probably going to cost you a couple day 2 picks. Also, I don't know if Cardinals are picking in the top. Maybe they're going to do their work on evaluating this crop of quarterbacks. Maybe they come to the decision that they want to trade Murray, take that dead cap hit, and reset the quarterback clock. But I don't know. Right now, it seems like Murray is back in Arizona. There has not been much juice as far as the trade market for him.
And I feel like I'd rather have Justin Fields, and maybe it's just the cost control the first 2 years. But his base salary, we talk about this all the time. The base salary is what you look at when you start talking about trades. No one wants that contract. Look at the base salary. Okay. Mm-hmm. The base salary in 2024 is big. It's $37 million. Okay. So if I send some money if I send some picks, if I make a trade for Kyler Murray, I'm going to need them to eat some of that contract. 2025, it's only 18. 2026, it's only 2022. 2027, it's only 19. That's not a ton of money. They're taking the dead cap hit on the signing bonus. So basically, you've got 4 years of under $20 million quarterback in Kyler Murray. I don't trust his health, Nick. You talk about health with Justin Fields. With him and his style of play and his size makes me nervous. Now, going back to, I don't want Kyler Murray, blah, blah, blah. I don't want this guy. I don't want that guy. I don't want this guy. Is Kyler Murray a better option than Taylor Heineke and Desmond Ridder? Yes, he is. Okay, we need to explore that option then.
I think Murray's answered a good bit of my questions this season because I was curious about how much he could play outside of that 10 personnel heavy shotgun air raid that we saw of Cliff Kingsbury. And it's a small sample size. I get it, but he's impressed me this season overall. And I think that his style of play, while he is smaller, I don't think it lends itself to bone-crushing hits the way that Fields play. Like, I don't know if Fields is going to play beyond his next contract with how he takes hits. A little bit of a, I'll say this word because it's a title of a TV show, but sometimes it's a little bit Jackass, the TV show, where it's like, let me do this stunt. Let me take this hit. Buddy, it's the first quarter, week 2. Like, get out of bounds. You don't have to do that. It's one of my big concerns with Jaden Daniels, too. It's like, God, I appreciate it when you're, diving on it for first down, but like, we need you the rest of the season. So maybe, don't take that hit. But Murray, I think, even though he is smaller, I don't see him give himself up. I think he protects himself pretty well. It's one of the things that's fascinating about Kyler Murray, or about Lamar Jackson, honestly, is how he's so good at not taking hits. But I think I would take Murray over Fields. And I really do like Fields. I think he'd be a good fit here. But Murray is, I think, the better quarterback right now from what I've seen.
Yeah, they'd be on the table because that both of those teams are seriously considering quarterback with their picks, which again, it's going to make it really hard to go up and get one of those top 3 guys.
Yeah,
it's going to be crazy expensive. It's going to be expensive. It's going to cost you 3 first round. And the thing is, I guess it wouldn't really matter to usually it's a swap of picks plus 2, which is still 3 first round picks. So the difference is, let's say the Cardinals or Bears decide to keep their quarterback. Well, then they just get 3 first round picks. It's not like plus 2. Does that make sense? The math in there, it's not, it's like, oh, it costs 3 first round. Never mind. I confuse myself with this discussion.
And Scott, we've talked for an hour now, and we haven't even previewed the actual game.
I know
at all.
A lot of what's interesting in this game is, could Justin Fields be the quarterback of the Atlanta Falcons next year? Is there any interest there?
There is. Just as far as a preview of the game before we get out, because I got to get moving here for the doctor's appointment. But these are probably 2 of the most underrated defenses in football, and probably 2 of the more surprising defenses. The Bears, to start the year, the first 5-6 weeks, were down there with the Broncos in terms of their defense. And since they've traded for Montez Sweat, they have been one of the best 5 to 6 defenses in football, especially stopping the run. So I'm really curious to see if the Falcons are going to continue to run the football, even though it might be smashing your head against a brick wall. And that'll probably come down to a bit as if the defense is holding up against Justin Fields. Now, the Falcons are also excellent against the run, so it almost feels a little bit Spider-Man pointing here. I think I trust the explosiveness of, DJ Moore. I think he's the X factor here because I think he's probably the best offensive player in the field in this game. So I think I might lean with the Bears in this one, just because I think DJ Moore, you're going to get some explosive play out there. And even though Justin Fields is a lot of negative plays, much more positives as well. So I'll probably go with the Bears with the DJ Moore, Justin Fields combo over Heineke plus Bijan / Pitts / London. But this is an interesting game. No doubt.
Yeah. I'm just kind of looking back to last year. It wasn't exactly an offensive showcase, even though the score ended up getting a little bit higher. 27-24. And this is one where they lost Pitts on that dirty tackle.
Eddie Jackson
from their safety, hitting them low from behind in the open field it's cheap. Afraid to take a guy up high and went after his kneecaps from behind. Still pissed about that. Justin Fields went 14 of 21 for 153 yards and a touchdown and interception. He was sacked 4 times last year. Hell, they only had 24 sacks. So there goes to your quarterback stat. And then rushed 18 times for 85 yards and a touchdown. Mariota was 13 of 20 for 131 yards, scored a rushing touchdown and had a passing touchdown. Both defenses are significantly better. Both teams put a lot of resources into their defenses over the offseason, which was what made them fun. They from a team building standpoint, they're very similar of when they were taking on their dead cap hits, when they were going to have their money, when the draft picks should start paying off. And they're not that far apart. I would argue the Chicago Bears are playing a little bit better than the Atlanta Falcons right now. If the Atlanta Falcons play like they get against the Colts, they will win this game. Can they take it on the road and do that? We will see. We will see. I'm most interested in the quarterback play of this game. I think the Falcons are at about an 8% chance of making the playoffs, and the Bears might be even a little bit less. They're not mathematically out of it. So we start looking into the nuances, the battles within the battle. Do the Bears bring back their quarterback? I mean, do the Bears and their head coach? Both of these teams could be in the market for a new head coach and a new quarterback in the offseason. The Bears just have a pretty good idea of what they can do, what's available to them because of some good moves last year in the draft.
Yeah, it's a lot of turnover, and we'll see what happens. I do think that, Chris Walker makes a good point. Sweat was a great get for the Bears. We also got Hillman coming in. Hill Squared, good to see you, Hilly. Says, late to the party, I will say this, Falcons might have to make a Julio deal to lock down a solid option at quarterback. I mean, if you're talking about getting into the top 5 this year, it's probably going to cost that. And if you miss, you set your team back probably 5 years. For that kind of thing, just for the long-term impact of that.
I will say 5 just because you've got the money in free agency to buy your way out of some of those bad problems. And you're young enough on offense. It's just 2 years because you spend 2 years trying to figure out that the quarterback isn't the right guy, and then you got to start over a quarterback again.
I feel like the ripples are still probably 3 to 5 years down the line because you're missing those developmental guys too, and you're missing out on that next cost control, especially with early picks. But who knows? There's no guarantees. But if you hit on the quarterback, man, that's why it's the big lottery, right? If you hit, you're good. If you miss, unless you're the 49ers, good luck. Chris Walker says Sweat was a great get for the Bears. Yeah, he was. That's a little bit envious. We'll see. The Falcons definitely could use an edge rusher, one of the lowest pass rush win rate and pass rush graded teams in football this season. Really shows a good job what Nielsen's done despite not having guys on the front end. Keith Brugman comes in, says he said Fields would go number 1 in this draft. I don't think we said that.
Not quite that, but where would we be discussing him? We would be discussing him as being possibly the number 1 overall pick. And that's not a stretch considering I had him number 2 when he came out. And if he had spent the last 3 years at Oregon instead of with the Chicago Bears, the narrative around 25-year-old Justin Fields would be very different. He's only 11 months older than Michael Penix. No, he's 13 months older than Michael Penix, 11 months older than Bo Nix. Just the idea of how the hype that would be around him if he had been playing college ball the last 2 years instead of floundering with a poor, rebuilding, cash-strapped Chicago Bears team who is just now really the check mark's going in the right direction. They really want to start over at quarterback? Maybe. Is that team set up well enough that a rookie quarterback can come in and do better? Maybe. Well, why would they get rid of him? Why would you want one of their cast-offs? Because he's better than what you've got. That's why. And the availabilities of quarterbacks, he might be the best quarterback that's available for you. So we will see. No, I was making the Chris Walker says Ohio State, not Oregon. I was just making the comparison to Bo Nix. Bo Nix floundered at Auburn, had a lot of success, especially this year at Oregon in a high-powered. CJ Stroud didn't get talked a lot about because they didn't need him to. It's a very quarterback-centric offense out in Oregon where he's going to put up numbers. So he'd have 150 touchdowns in 3 years at Oregon if Justin Fields had played the last 3 years at Oregon instead of Chicago and a rebuilding NFL team.
Yep. Yeah. It's who knows? They're going to be looking. I can see Patriot Watch really doesn't like Fields, so we get
Well,
it.
what's funny here is there's Falcons fans are getting mad at a Chicago Bears fan for putting down their own quarterback. Listen, if he doesn't like him, so be it.
Yeah, we'll see.
We'll see. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. There's very divisive discussions about Justin Fields. He hasn't had a lot of success. He has struggled. Does that mean he is not good enough for this league? Maybe it does. Maybe it does. I'm not convinced yet that that's it. I think the Bears have had their problems. Mm-hmm. Am I convinced that Desmond Ridder cannot play in the NFL? No, I'm not. Do I think that Arthur Smith and Desmond Ridder have not been good enough? Yes, I do. I don't mind having Desmond Ridder on this team for one more year to let him try and win the job and get some experience, but I'm going to try and improve the room. As of right now, Justin Fields is better than Desmond Ridder. That's not a hot take. No. What is the cost to try and get him? What are your other options? Those are the questions the Atlanta Falcons will have to ask over the course of the next 5 months.
Yep. Going to be interesting. No doubt about that. So we'll see. Score prediction, Scott? I think Atlanta's going to lose. I think it's going to be a close one, but I think the Bears have turned it around a lot, especially defensively. So I'm going to go with the Bears winning this one. I'll go 23-20.
I had 23-22.
Okay.
Yeah, I had 23-22, so that's an over-under of 45. The over-under on this game is 37.5, so depending on weather, I might go the over on this one. I don't feel great about who wins this game. Both teams have been too helter-skelter for me. Mm-hmm. I just don't know who's going to show up. Typically, if that's the case, I'll go with the home team, and the Bears have been playing pretty good the last few weeks. The best team out of this bunch was the Falcons team that showed up last week against the Indianapolis Colts. That's the best we've seen either of these teams play all year. If that team shows up or anything looking close to that team, the Falcons will go up there and beat the Bears. I haven't seen that team but once this year.
Didn't the Bears paddle the Lions just like 2 or 3 weeks ago?
Yeah, that was in Chicago too.
Yeah,
and then I think they split.
They did.
Series. And the Lions defense has been pretty poor recently. So
all you need to do is play the Broncos offense, and then you look pretty damn good. But Scott, we probably need to run. Falcons winning 30-23. I think this is an interesting game. I think this is an upstart Bears team, and the Falcons maybe found something too. So much intrigue. It should be a lot of fun.
I remember watching Josh Dobbs run circles around the Falcons around the edge. We'll see what Justin Fields can do. So I think it's going to be I do like the over in this one. So good to see it. He predicts that's a lot of points. You definitely like. Troy is very confident in the Falcons. Zach Powers, Falcons win 17-3. Windy, cold game. Yeah. Before I say take the over, I want to see the conditions on this. But we are going to get out of here. This is our final show of 2023. I will be back. I'm not holding Nick to this one. But I'll be back on Monday, January 1st. That'll be a Monday. We'll do a morning after show talking about this game. I think we'll have a better idea because I'll be honest with you, Nick, I'm falling off. I've been all on the Justin Fields. I'm tilting negatively more recently. I keep expecting him to take this step, see him play bad teams. He gets off to a fast start, and then it's just nothing the rest of the way. We will see. So I'm looking forward to this game. I hope y'all have one hell of a holiday weekend and a New Year's Eve. Be careful out there. Want to say thank you to Drake Wally for coming in with the stars, the super sticker. Dave, Keith Robbins, Oblivion Empire, Mark Wilson. Keith Robbins came in more than once. And Jason Heller, all with the financial support. That means a lot, the donations you make to the show. Thank you for supporting us. Nick, any last words before we get out of here? It's almost Football Thursday.
Just really excited for all the games this week. We will be going Friday, right, Scott? Different.
We'll be going Friday. This is the last Falcons podcast. We'll do coast to coast on Friday, and we'll take a look at the bigger games. For me, this does not qualify, so I might not even stream with this one to the Falcons channel. Make sure you're following us on youtube.com/Scott Kennedy or facebook.com/Scott Kennedy Sports. We will be going there for sure, but I probably will not put this one on the Falcons channel on Friday because we're talking playoffs, and Bears and Atlanta don't really qualify.
At some point, we'll do a first-round mock, Scott. I know it's got to be coming. We have all off-season for that. But, yep, nothing else. Just hoping my PCP visit here today is all healthy and good to go since I haven't been.
Angel dust, dude.
Primary care physician. I'm in healthcare. I always think
it's angel dust, man.
Oh, well, that's don't do drugs. Pretty
it's
square.
Like psychoplitholine or whatever that was. That was like a 60s thing, I think.
Okay. Now I think it actually is ringing a bell. I think they talk about it in Walk Hard. It's like a 70s drug. He's like, I'm hopped up on PCP. No, primary care physician. I work in healthcare.
So that just got flagged for YouTube for talking drugs.
Yeah, well, and we are talking playoffs, Harry, but that's more stuff. Broncos for breakfast on Friday. We don't do Broncos for breakfast.
We'll do tomorrow. Broncos for breakfast tomorrow on youtube.com/milehighhuddle. And then coast to coast football. We'll be talking NFL and maybe some draft stuff, maybe some quarterback stuff. But probably we'll stick with NFL, and we'll dive into first of the year. We'll start diving into draft in January, which is just next week.
Woo-woo. Should be fun.
So on that note, thanks for being here, everybody. We went 70 minutes, and we had a great time with y'all. We will see you again. Join us tomorrow for some Broncos talk. Join us Friday for some NFL talk. Otherwise, we'll see you on Monday. Hope you all have a great holiday weekend. Stay safe out there, everybody.
Peace.